All right, this is episode 207, we think. We did math real quick. And
It's not.
It's not?
No, it would be 206.
We're going to...
Well, maybe we'll just make it 207.
Maybe we'll make it
Ryan.
207. But
Gosh.
for whoever's listening, it's either episode 206 or 207 because...
I could be wrong.
Believe it or not, we pre-record these things and we don't do them live.
What?
I know they sound like they're live because
they sound so good.
Yeah, that's right. Like you're right there in front of us.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be tradition that we have this guest on every 100 episodes.
Yes.
Because we said we wanted Devin on a lot sooner because for a long time he was one of our most engaging fans of the
For
podcast.
sure, yes.
We would post something and he would be the one to respond. So
Now
I should have brought a shirt
episodes
for
later.
you at this point. Yeah, honorary member. I don't know if you want that. But.
Of course I do.
Erica, where are we today?
We're at Henniker, but we're talking Wildbloom.
That's right. And if you listen to episode 107 with Henniker, we actually mentioned Wildbloom.
We did.
Briefly.
Yeah.
But if you want more of Devin's backstory, how he got
Listen to
into
that
beer,
episode.
and all of the knowledge that he has, because honestly, probably one of the more knowledgeable guests that we've had on the podcast.
Thanks.
Shut up. I'm not fluffing your ego or anything.
Gosh.
I'm just stating a fact. Don't thank me. Just take it.
Own it.
We know. No, I'm just kidding. You're more like built, though, now. Have you been lifting?
A little bit.
Oh, shit.
Well, squats over. Hello.
baby.
Yep. We got a gym in the back of the brewery.
Yeah, I bet you
what it
do.
is.
What is it, lifting kegs?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you want to listen to Devin's episode 107 with Henniker and learn about the beer that they're making there, that he's also making there. But Wildbloom is your newest entity.
Couldn't get enough
Yeah.
of Henniker's.
So Wildbloom is a venture, another brewery that operates within Henniker Brewing, but different license structure. It's a alt prop through the federal, and it's a tenant brewer through the state. So it means that we have our own license, our own brew house, our own everything. We just rent space from Henniker, and it's ran by my wife and I, Beth.
Hey, Beth.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to have you on every 207 episodes. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. So cool. Husband
Yeah, so
wife duo. That's
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's been something we've been planning on for a long time. It was actually part of the reason that we kind of made the shift to New Hampshire.
I thought I was
because-
going to say why you got married. No,
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
Well, she probably didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we wouldn't be,
Yeah,
but
It'd be a struggle.
yeah, it would definitely be a struggle.
Yeah. So how old is Wildbloom at this point?
We are about a year and a half. It was Labor Day of 2020. We released our first batch.
Yeah. Which was?
Gnome Shoes, which is kind of morphed into becoming our flagship beer. And that is basically a riff on if Le Chouffe was to create a low ABV version of that beer, which they don't, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
But you do.
But we do. And it was really, we just love those. A lot like in Belgium and wherever else, they have these awesome low ABV estery beers that don't travel well. So we didn't get them here, and they wouldn't ship them. So they just shipped the high ABV ones. So we really decided we wanted to start making those sort of things because they have to be drank fresher. And we were like, we can supply that.
Yeah. Why did you want to open Wildbloom? You already
A
work as a
second
brewer.
one,
Yeah.
right?
Like when we just asked Jen, like when she
Yeah.
sleeps. When do you guys sleep?
Never
Yeah.
really. But the idea behind it was we can start up. We don't need investors. We can do this thing in cash up front. We can start it that way, not owe a ton of money up front. Buy the brew house, buy stuff as we're going along. While Beth and I both have full-time jobs, we're able to continue, because we're not taking a salary from Wildbloom, we can just keep putting anything we're making back into the company. Okay, we need to eventually have more kegs. We'll buy kegs. We just bought more hoses. We buy this, that. All the piece that we'll eventually need that, we can complete the whole kind of thing, and the eventual loan of the build-out will be much less because we'll have 75% of the equipment.
Yeah.
Are you eventually going to have a tap space, you think?
That is the idea.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So for people who don't know, Wildbloom is what are you known for at this point? I mean, a year and a half. It's
What
going to be.
are you?
Yeah. What are you?
So it's basically we make a lot of yeast-driven beers, a lot of low ABV stuff, some higher, like just a few, but mainly I'd say 90% of what we make is all sub 5.5%, and most of
Nice.
it's sub 5.
That's awesome.
And it's really yeast-driven beers is what we're kind of going for yeast driven. And also the other thing about Wildbloom is that all the ingredients, except for one or two, are all sourced from New England.
Cool.
Love it.
So we're working directly with the farmers on what they're growing and getting that, whether it's malted or something else to spec or growing a different variety or whatever else it is. We're working directly with them and keeping, the dollars in their pockets.
Yeah.
We love that. And you're only sold because you don't have tap space. You are sold like in stores though.
Yeah, so we self-distribute around the state and we do farmers markets as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it was because we're out of Henniker, we cannot be poured on the taps here. And also we really didn't want that crossover of saying, is this a Henniker beer? Is it
Right.
a Wildbloom one? These two things are the same brewery because in the state we already have one of those, Schilling and Resilience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
But Resilience is part of Schilling, where
Yeah.
Wildbloom is not part of Henniker. We wanted to make sure there was no crossover in that with consumers. It's confusing enough.
Yeah.
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 That we really didn't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
But the farmers markets, which ones do you pop up at? All of them?
So we are at the downtown Concord Winter Farmers Market, which is Saturdays from 9 to 12 in Eagle Square. In the summer, we're hoping to do the Concord Summer Farmers Market this year. And we are at the Canterbury Farmers Market on Wednesdays from 4 to 6:30. We do that one every second and fourth Wednesday of the month.
It's not every other.
It's not every other.
Right.
Yeah.
Second
Because
and
those
fourth.
5 months. Yeah. 5.
that screwed us up last year, but that one is really super fun.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
guys-
so that one's great because there's no open container law at it. Because
Hell
it's
yeah.
in the evenings, yeah.
Let's go.
It's happy hour.
It's
Yeah,
in the
right.
evening, so you crack open a beer and you buy some veggies.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And they
And,
always have like a
do a band.
bluegrass band, yeah.
Yeah.
and one of them, you do a donut and beer pairing. I always see like your post, like it's,
Yeah.
you're going to pair this donut with this beer this weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
And just is like, I
Not
wish I was there.
necessarily donuts. It's baked goods.
Baked
from
goods.
our
That's what it is.
friend
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Table, who's a awesome baker, Chelsea.
She's awesome. And she actually just as of a couple weeks ago started making almost all the stuff she's baking with local grains as well.
Oh, that's great.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's a
we like
really
that.
good
You guys are a great
symbiotic.
partnership there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been awesome with her as working through. She's like, oh, and where do you get this from? Who am I supposed to talk to about this? So
Yeah.
using the connections I have within grain to get her access to those ingredients too has been really cool.
Very cool.
Beth, do you run the social media?
I do.
Yeah. So this is
Not well.
No, I was.
No,
gonna
no,
say,
you do great.
I was going to say the perception of Wildbloom is actually bigger than I think what it actually is.
Thanks.
So that's a huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's a little hard because, since we're both working full time, it's
Yeah.
like, when do we take pictures? Where do we take
Yeah.
pictures? Like,
Yeah.
And what is the
you don't
algorithm this week and all that
want- Yeah,
stuff?
you don't want pictures in my cubicle at work.
But you include your
That's
dog a lot, which I love.
Yeah.
He's nice.
What do you?
Yeah.
What is your full time gig?
I work for the Tree Care Industry Association, so we do like safety programs for arborists.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah,
for
for
them.
Yeah.
So, how important is social media to launching a brand that's only sold in distribution or farmers market?
I don't know. That's a hard question actually because it seems to be super important, but we don't get a lot of people coming to the farmers market that are like, "Hey, we saw this on social media. We're coming out." So we have a weird relationship with it where I think it's very different for us from other places that have tap rooms, where a lot of the people that follow us, I think, don't necessarily come out to find our beer. Like they'll go to a local store, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which has helped a lot because then we can kind of direct them towards where they can find it.
Yep.
And then also I think that does help our relationship with those stores where it's, yes, like you can't come get it from us, but go visit the store near you because we do supply them. And then
Right.
that store is happy that we're feeding people to them
Yeah.
instead of taking it away. So I feel like right now and what we're doing, we're really working to build those relationships more with accounts. And that is kind of awesome for us because hopefully, after we have our own brick and mortar, we're going to maintain that level of self-distribution.
Right.
And we're going to be able to maintain supplying them with the product those people
Those
want.
already customers we
Yeah.
have.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's backtrack for a second.
Yeah.
What beer do we have before this?
The beer we had before this was Chickadee, and that is
Yes.
a grisette. And for me, it's very almost like lime zesty, kind of honeydew, and
agreed.
a nice tartness to it.
Yeah.
And does that a lot of that flavor comes from the yeast itself, not from hops?
I'd say 99% of that one comes from the yeast because there's basically less than a handful of hops in that beer.
Yeah.
If you're comfortable talking about it, what yeast strain did you use for that?
So that one is Brett Trois.
Ooh,
So that one was what everybody used to think was a Brett strain
Right.
back in 2010. And then it was proven to be a Sack strain. So it takes forever, where it's goofy because it's a 4.4% beer, but it's like 6 weeks in tank.
Oh my goodness.
Because the first, the first 90% of it ferments in about 4 days, and the rest of it takes another 4 weeks to finish.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it just has this really long cycle time on
Yeah.
it.
Slow roll, yeah.
But you do not get that complexity in a low ABV beer if you're trying to push that.
Yeah.
We're drinking Bear Camp right now, and like, if our listeners know, I am on such a smoked beer kick. What is it, the Rausch beer?
You are right
having
now.
like a smoked
Yeah.
golden ale. Like, thank you.
So good.
Smoked peat, or what's?
No, this is an oak smoked wheat malt.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So there's an oak smoked wheat where it's a 70% oak smoked wheat. It's a Kolsch yeast strain, really simple, and just let the smoke shine on
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
But it's not an
it-
overwhelming where your mouth doesn't. It's also, for me, some smoke starts to taste like meat. This one goes
Yeah.
campfire.
Right.
And some also can go ashtray. Again, this one goes straight campfire.
love a
So it
good
just
ashtray.
stays.
Ash doesn't taste good.
I love that.
It does not.
No, I love it, and you're right. It's campfire. And
It's
Yeah,
light.
it's light. It's
Yeah.
easy drinking. It's not overpowering. Some smoked beers are like, oh, that's a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
So the
Really good.
comment that I get the most about this beer, it's the most drinkable smoked beer.
Yep,
I would agree with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That I've had.
Yeah.
Yeah. This one's 5.1%, so it's a little bit heavier. I know,
how dare you.
We're
Go.
going crazy right now.
Getting-
Beth, when did you first hear of Wildbloom as like a idea?
I think
First date.
Well, we've been pretty much. We've been together for 10 years. So then 10 years. It wasn't Wildbloom then.
No.
What was it back then?
It
There was no name back then. No, it was
That's
just
a terrible name.
unnamed brewery for 8 years, probably. And then it kind of, we were like, oh, this is actually coming to fruition. We kind of need a name.
So
Yeah.
who came
Yeah.
up with the name?
Beth did in a roundabout way.
Yeah.
So Beth's degree is in horticulture, so we really wanted to intertwine flowers into the whole concept.
Yeah.
And we talked about wildflower because that was kind of perfect.
Because it's what you're brewing. Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
But Wildflower is actually a name of a brewery in Australia that's distributed here that does all sour and wild and like really, really, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
from Texas, so we're like, let's not step on
yeah.
our toes there.
Yeah.
And so us being yeast driven and kind of Belgian centric, we looked up what is Wildflower in Dutch. And it turns out it's Wild Bloom, but it's BLOEM.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
But we really didn't want people asking for that Wild Bloom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, you
Yeah.
got to educate the beer drinkers.
So we changed it to Wild Bloom, and that's kind of how it just fell in line.
Yeah.
And after that, I love it so much more than Wildflower.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a little different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really just kind of fell in line, and I could not be happier. It was a name like we had I don't know how many different renditions of different words, and you
Yeah.
know you say something a million times and every word sounds terrible.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And bloom almost kind of like you're saying speaks to the yeast too. Like yeast kind of blooms in a
Blooms, yeah.
sense. So it's and they're fragrant and it's and it really ties apart. And
And a lot of the beers are that kind of light, spritzy, airy, bright kind
Right.
of realm. So it kind of all plays into what we're making.
yeah.
Yeah. We were joking about educating the beer drinker, but Grisette, smoked golden ale.
Are you educating your drinker?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
That is the hope. Is
Yeah.
that I think for a long time the beer industry was driven by education.
when?
When I got into beer, so we're talking.
Okay. Like 2013?
We're talking 2007.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Oh,
so
that's nice of you.
Yeah. So we're talking about even back then it was you were telling people what a porter was. And you were telling people why it tastes
Oh,
like
I know
that.
what you're saying. Yeah, I thought you
Yes.
meant like, the beer industry was like so educational for people. I was like, what, really?
It was though
Yeah.
because people walked into tap rooms and you had people behind a bar
No
that
one knew what
wanted
those
to
styles were.
engage and they
Yeah.
wanted to tell you what things were and where flavor came from. Now it almost seems like we're taking the easy way out and just giving them what they already want.
Yep.
Which is one way of doing about it, but I think because of that and because of social media, we're getting homogenization of taste, where it's everything is starting to kind of blend and taste the same across a lot of different brands.
I didn't say that with like IPAs or double IPAs.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
definitely
do you
agree.
have an IPA?
We do not.
Is that on purpose?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so talk about that. Why? After a word
This
from our
break.
sponsor.
Did you know that your favorite Massachusetts breweries use hops from a local family-owned hop farm right here in Massachusetts?
Our friends over at 4 Star Farms are there for you whether you're a commercial brewery or a small batch home brewer.
Make sure to head over to their website today and get your hands on some of the best and freshest hops available locally. Cheers.
At our local homebrew shop, Beer and Wine Hobby, you can get everything you need to make beer, wine, cider, cheese, and more. Not sure where to start? They have knowledgeable staff there to help. Beer and Wine Hobby is family-owned and located in Danvers, Massachusetts. Visit their website, beer-wine.com, and use our promo code BREWROOTS for 10% off your online order today.
Shirts on Tap is the box subscription service for craft beer lovers. Each month, Shirts on Tap partners up with 7 different breweries from across the country and collaborates on a sweet custom shirt design. We've been teamed up with Shirts on Tap since the inception of the podcast and are proud to announce a new promo code for all of our listeners. To get your first shirt for $5 off, go to the link in our description below and use the promo code. And remember, drink better beer, wear better shirts. All right, so we mentioned IPAs.
Yeah, so
Yes.
we're not doing any IPAs just because that's really not what we drink. And they're already so well done out there. Why are we going to compete on that when we are self-distributed, where we have so much availability of, the market to play in as far as
There's only like 4 Grisettes out there.
Right.
Our
So-
mission is to educate people that they love Belgians because they don't realize that they do.
Yeah.
I
They do.
agree.
Well, I
Yeah.
think a lot of times people, and do not get me wrong, I think Allagash White is a great Belgian.
But that's what they think about when they
that's-
think
that's
Belgian
what they
beer.
think Belgian beer.
Yeah, for sure.
It's actually interesting if you look at Allagash, they've started removing Belgian from almost all their beer descriptions.
Marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, in that kind of way, where that's why Gnome Shoes, our kind of flagship blonde, is not a Belgian blonde, it's just a blonde.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to follow their suit because if they found that to be worthwhile, I'm not going to include it.
Yeah. There's a reason for it, right?
Yeah.
I think, Ryan, yeah.
How are you going to convince someone to buy your blonde or your grisette instead of an IPA? Like for me, it seems like having at least one IPA, so they have it, right? They're going to buy it most likely because it's an IPA. And then if they like it, then they'll go try your other stuff. So how are you going to convince them to do that without the IPA?
We're finding at the farmer's market, there's almost an equal number of people saying, oh, you don't make an IPA? Oh, you don't make an IPA. This is why I like you.
That's rad. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's almost, yes, we do realize we're going to cut out part of that market. But the more I think about what that market of specifically the New England IPA kind of thing is it's almost, for lack of a better term, incestual, where they're drinking, it's the same 100 people in an area that are just drinking the same beers from the same
Over
breweries.
and over.
And so I really do believe it looks like a much larger part of the market than it actually is.
I'm going to get a lot of shit about it. It's the Nickelback of beer. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Do you think the same thing is going to translate well on the shelf without that human interaction?
Well, we're only on the shelf.
Well,
in
at the
stores.
farm, I'm talking compared to a farmer's market where you can
Yeah,
talk
it
to
actually
someone.
has been because
Yeah.
that's where we do sell a little bit of beer at the farmer's market, but I'd say 90% of it's sold in stores.
Excellent.
And we're seeing that exact translation of people being like, yeah, you're the option that if someone says, I don't want IPA, we're giving them your beer.
Excellent.
So that
That's
seems
awesome.
like it has been translating. Like I said, we do know we're cutting out some of the population, and that's just some of the hit we're going to take to hopefully gain the rest of that population as real fans of the brand, where those people that are IPA heavy are fans of IPA. They're not really a huge fan.
They're not loyalists
Yeah.
per se.
Yeah, and
exactly.
they're a huge fan of that brand as long as they're cool for that 1 to 2 years, and
Right.
then they drop off to the next cool one.
Right.
And that's great. I love that idea that they're that engaged.
For sure. I think you're definitely hitting a group of people, though. I mean, brewers, us. There's definitely a group of people who are over IPAs and really just want something that's clean, easy drinking, that they can have, 6 of at a time if they want. And they can hang out for 4 hours and not go home sloshed.
I mean, the way I think about it is in the 80s, sushi was not big, right? If you asked how many people have eaten sushi around the table, it would be nobody. Now today it's more common. So it's
sushi.
I feel like this beer, if you educate people and they're like, it's not that weird, you know what I
Right.
mean?
It's
Like,
a slow burn. It's going to
Yeah, yeah.
take more time. It's going to take more education, but that's just
yeah.
almost the kind of thing of knowing what we're getting into.
And you have
Yeah.
the time for
and
it.
at the
You're
end of the
not
day,
rushing
Exactly.
into it.
it's beer, right? Like, who doesn't like? I mean, there are people who don't like beer.
And the other thing is that when people come up and they say, I only like IPAs, what else, like, what do you have that I want?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we actually don't make an IPA, but if you're looking for something that's really bold and this and that, why don't you try Bear Camp?
Yeah.
Or if you like the lighter
One's
side,
bold, yeah.
yeah. If you like the lighter side of it, try Chickadee. It has a lot of those same citrus flavors you like, but it's going to be a different kind of beer. And quite a few of them come back and they go, I really love that. Or I drank 2 of those. I loved them, but I actually want this. And so we're finding a lot of that when we can engage directly with consumers. So it's been interesting. The other reason why we're probably not going to do one, most likely ever, is because with us sourcing all of our ingredients strictly from New England,
Yeah, it's hard to get the hops and everything.
yeah, I just don't really. We could probably do some awesome, like more West Coasty kind of stuff. And as they grow
Definitely.
more hops,
Yeah.
they don't really attribute the kind of thing you'd want out of a New England. So why am I going to try and force that ingredient? Or are we going to change our business model and change what we're trying to do and what we believe in to make one specific beer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't bother.
It helps that your can art is simple.
I love the
And,
can art. Yeah.
A lot of times you go to the package store, right, and it's like,
What is this?
What is this? Like, I know what this
There's
is. Like,
Oompa
right off the
Loompas
bat.
and whatever else all over the can.
How important is marketing for you guys because you're only in stores?
So that is a huge factor because
I'm gonna have some more of this.
No, please go for it. Finish it off.
because we need people to find the beer on the shelf without us engaging directly with them, like Ryan was just saying, that we don't have that one-on-one to talk to them about it, is that the label does bring them in because
Simple.
it's crisp, it's clean, it's simple, and it's also a repeated image for us. Every label
Yeah.
does have 1 to 2 Easter eggs on it. So there's 1 or 2 things changed every single time,
Okay.
but generally speaking,
This is the moon.
there's a
Nah,
moon,
yeah.
and then where it says drink local is a bear instead of the state.
Oh yeah. Who does the can art?
Our friends Lance and Julie, they run FRW Studios.
Give them a shout out. Yeah.
Yep, and they are awesome. She has been involved in beer for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
She went to college with Beth.
Yep.
Oh, that's
we went
awesome.
to Keene State.
And
Nice.
so Julie was the graphic designer for the BA for like 10 years. She worked closely with Ray at Cicerone. She was the designer for Stone and Oscar
Oh, very
Blues
cool.
and a bunch of other stuff
Yeah.
out there. Like she's now doing, I think she works for like 50 different breweries. And so
Oh, jeez.
the logo and our branding and labels were our wedding present.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice. It's. Other thing is, you guys are in 12-ounce cans, which is like the New Hampshire.
It's
thing.
a New Hampshire
It's the
thing.
New Hampshire thing, I think.
I
had
wish
this
it was a
conversation
little bit
last time,
more.
yeah.
Yeah. We are really, so we're doing 4-pack, 12 ounce, and that for us, we do a 1 beer as a 4-pack or as a 16 ounce.
Which
No.
makes that?
12 ounce, 6-pack. There we go.
Oh, okay. I was gonna be like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really was just, the styles kind of want that.
Yeah.
We're making them so that you actually drink it and then you want the next one.
Yeah.
And it stays cold throughout. If you're doing a
Right.
16 ounce, maybe you don't grab the next one, but you might drink 2 if they're 5% or
Yeah.
under.
Right.
But you may not drink 2 16-ounce cans. The other thing on that is playing a little bit of kind of, margin game.
Yeah.
Is that if you're buying a 4-pack, like 12 ounce for $10, that's actually the same price as almost I think it's a $14 or $15 6-pack. So we get to keep a decent margin out of it, but you're still keeping, the
Yeah.
price on the shelf looks awesome.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, you wish was in bottles.
Certain ones I wish wasn't bottles, actually.
Beth,
Beth's reaction was perfect.
Now, Beth hates bottles.
Fancy ones we haven't made yet, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like fancy
bottles.
beers in bottles.
Yeah.
Yep. Like we bought some like wood, so we're hoping to do some Brett Saisons and things like that.
Nice.
That should be in bottles.
Definitely,
I don't
like
really
those
think
green
that should-
Yeah.
bottles.
I don't think
yeah.
that should be
I
canned.
think everything we have in a can right now belongs in a can.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's also the occasion for drinking. Like all the beers we've done so far have been, they are designed around an occasion. They're designed to be active. They're designed to do after something.
Yeah.
And they're not meant to be like precious.
Right.
Like they may be like, obviously I love them,
Of course.
but they're not meant to be a precious thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Served out of the can or glass? Do you care?
I like glass.
Okay.
Beth would say can.
I would say
wow.
can too. Ryan, what would you say? Do dishes.
Yeah, I think every once in a while you'll find a beer where you do taste a difference. but I will say it will seem like it's definitely fresher longer in a can instead of in a glass.
I enjoy glass.
It looks
For
cool, but
90%
it's
of my
like
beers. I would say some lagers, I'm just like, I'm just drinking it from a can.
So
You can't shotgun a bottle.
So we're drinking.
That's true.
We're drinking pine cone.
Pine cone is up next. Yeah. So
And this is not the one that you would be like, if you like IPAs, drink this one.
Yeah, so when we have it, we'll direct
Oh,
that
right,
to
yeah.
them. But there is a thing of, if you're a big fan of New England IPAs, I'm not 100% sure that you would even like this at all.
This is like the beer I think that
It's more West Coast.
I hate to be like, my dad was looking for this one, but like I'll bring home like hoppy beers and he'll be like, why do you like all those fucking hops?
So this beer was
Hi, Dad.
designed to be as if Sierra Nevada was created today in New England.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So it is 100% whole cone Cascade. It's a really simple main malt house pale, a little bit of their wheat, and just whole cone Cascade. So super simple.
So whole cone instead of pellet.
Yeah.
Why is that? And is that just for this beer?
No, almost everything we use is whole cone.
Wow. So yeah, why?
So every single time you process something, you remove something.
Sure.
So the pelletizing process, it basically heats it up as it's combining. You lose one thing in it, and as you go to an extract, you lose another thing. And it's not saying you're not getting a different, better flavor out of it.
Getting a
what's-
different flavor.
But what's lost is like a hint of grassiness that I absolutely love, and like freshness that just goes away. And I'm in love with that flavor, so
Yeah.
I want more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a nice flavor on
Noted.
this. This is not super bitter.
No,
Super
and so
palatable, you know?
The thing about main grown Cascade is if you grow, so we're talking about the hop yard in Gorham.
Yep.
And if you grow whatever the hop is somewhere else in the world versus there,
gonna be different.
It goes sweet citrus specifically.
Yep.
So their hops go sweet citrus, and so for me, this gets a like candied orange kind of flavor.
I was gonna
that
say
goes
it almost
throughout.
tastes sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very, very dry beer.
Yeah.
So that sweetness is all from that Cascade,
Very
which you
interesting.
don't get in any other Cascade.
Are you able to do like hop selection for them or no? Not really.
Not really, because they only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't grow
You
a
get
whole
what
lot.
you get, kind of.
Yeah, but they do. So we are lucky enough that like we're pretty good friends with them that I can go and say, hey guys, before you go ahead and send it off to be pelletized, I want X amount of pounds of this for pellets,
Right.
X amount of
Yep.
this. And they do give a pretty awesome selection to
So
us.
now, how do you keep them? I mean, do you just brew it whenever? I mean, you can't just brew it fresh.
No, so they are dried.
Okay.
So it's dried, so it stores well, and then
Yeah.
they pack them into like oxygen purge
Yeah.
bags, so
Okay.
it does stay throughout the year.
And then it's in your freezer until you're ready to.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Very
We
cool.
do a fresh hop.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so the fresh hop
Everywhere.
beer is really cool because they
That's
again
a
at that
mad
hop
dash to get the beer and then get it going. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Mad Dash, but they also have a main wild hop that they're currently working on having
Very cool.
trademarked as the first hop to come out of New England. So they
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so they found it, brought it back, and found out it was growing incredible. And it's this almost pineapple bomb where
Ooh.
the theory is it was most likely cluster because that's what grew wild here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's mutated over the last couple hundred years.
So whatever it is now.
And
yeah.
we put it in a saison we call Forage, and it is amazing.
Yeah.
That'd
and
be
it
good for a
is-
saison.
Yeah, it just really expresses itself in this awesome way. We can actually grab some after. We have a little bit left over.
Ooh. So now I have more questions about this because
Yeah,
I just find
please.
it really interesting.
Yeah.
So
Nerd.
I know.
No, people are gonna. our listeners are gonna love it.
No, but like so with fresh hop beers, like legit fresh hop beers, you generally want to drink them soon, right?
Yes, where
So then
that's why
how
I
does
said let's
that
go
work?
try it. Yeah.
Right. So how does that work now with a beer that you're still using a whole cone hop? Does that aroma and everything else you're getting from the whole cone dissipate after?
No, it doesn't. As long
Interesting.
as for a whole cone, it's been dried, it's perfectly held. Like even Sierra Nevada. Sierra Nevada uses primarily whole cone now still.
Gotcha.
So on almost like Sierra Nevada Pale is 100% whole cone still.
That's crazy.
So it has no problem as long as it's dried holding up.
yeah.
If you have a shitty way of drying it, then yeah, it's going
Right.
to go rancid essentially.
Yeah.
But no problem there at all.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
And it's most places don't work with it because you have to kind of order them before the season.
They just take a lot more space, I would assume.
They take up a ton more
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
and also they're harder to work with. Most brew houses are not set up to be able to use whole cone.
Yeah.
They don't have enough, like whether it's the bottom of your kettle, you have some kind of like mesh filter, whatever it is,
Yeah.
to get those hops out.
Yeah.
So they don't have the processes and things to use them. And that's, why would you set your brew house up to be more complicated?
Right.
It's tank storage for you. I mean, I'm assuming you don't really care at this point, like for timing and everything. At that point, you brew to
Yeah,
what you
so
want at this point.
we kind of just brew what we want.
Yeah.
as far as we'd sit down, Beth and I, we talk about what do we want to see come up, which beers do we want to have come back. And so we're very selective about what we're producing now. So right now, I think we only have 9 beers that we've done, and we're only adding them on when we see a reason or a niche or something else to add, because we're basically can sell out pretty quick if we want to.
Yeah.
And so adding on...
Is it more an exclusivity thing, or is it a...
No, it's a time factor.
Okay. Yeah.
With running it as a, nights and weekends kind of idea, it's purely an element of time, because we have to brew and then deliver and all that.
But people might allure it as exclusivity, which is not a bad thing.
It's not. No, it's not a bad thing, but it really is just, for us, it comes down to a factor of time. Right now, we have 2 fermenters, and that is all that I would be able to handle at this point. Yeah.
So now, why do you bring a beer back or brew a beer? What are your reasons for brewing
Or not
that
bring one
style?
back. Yeah.
So when we look at, like the next one we're adding on is actually, we're doing it because of, we became friends with people out of Concord. So Revelstoke is a coffee shop there and like a little coffee roaster. And so we said, what do we want to do? Let's brew a beer together. Let's make something fun. How do we create a coffee beer in a non-traditional way? What do we want to do about this? Because he's doing a lot of light roast things. He doesn't do any even medium or dark roast. Everything that he roasts is a light roast. So it's a lot of like Ethiopian natural wash, where you're getting that blueberry, that lemon, those pops of like fruit in there. So how do we come up with a beer that would express that really well and not mask it within like a stout, a porter, whatever else? So let's do something to express that. So we, after sitting down talking about it, both got super interested in it. So that was the reason to create another beer.
Done.
That's a good enough reason.
Yeah.
Where do you see Wildbloom in the next couple of years?
But
Ryan is like giving me the death stare. He's like, if you
gotta
don't
wrap it up.
if you don't go to the sponsors,
Snip that.
snip. That's such a good office
Not
reference.
like-
Oh man, we need to make more office references in there. But cue up the sound,
doobly-doo.
the sponsorship machine. Doobly doobly loop. Take it away, please.
Are you a solo artist, band, podcaster, or anyone else who needs recording services?
Well, we got a place for you where your vision can become a reality.
Welcome to Small Pond Studios, built by hand with heart and sweat equity by musicians for musicians.
Go to smallpondstudios.io to reach out to get more information. And make sure you let them know that Brute sent you. Hey, Sound Guy Ryan here. Didn't know if you heard, but we're a part of the Hopped Up Network. There you'll find other informative podcasts about beer. So go ahead, follow them on social media, and visit them on their website, hoppedupnetwork.com, to learn more about the people, beer, and breweries from around the country. And until next time, thanks for listening. Cheers.
All right, so before the sponsor bump, we were talking about what's next for Wildbloom. Only being open for a year and a half, and that most of that year and a half being the pandemic. We're not going to count that. I mean, we're counting it like chronological.
It wasn't real.
Like when you're celebrating your 5 years, we're definitely counting that year and a half.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
like business-wise, you're like, oh shit, that was not real life.
It seems a very odd year and a half, and it seems like it's flown by.
Yeah.
But what's next?
For sure.
So what's next is we would definitely like to have a brick and mortar. We need to figure out where that would be. We do love New Hampshire. Obviously, with all the ingredients being sourced here, we want to, obviously, we're going to stay here. We're maintaining that whole thing moving forward. But a lot of it has been figuring out, what does Wildbloom stand for? Where are we going? What are we trying to do with it? And
I don't think there's many people doing, not to interrupt, but doing what you're doing. So the copycat mentality is not really.
no, and it's kind of hopefully that, we're not going to hit that and we're not going to come across that. So now it's, the beers are not the copycat mentality. The
Brick and mortar's not going to be.
the way to market is not. So now we have to make sure the brick and mortar won't be.
Okay.
And so that's, taking some time to figure out, how do we want to do it? How do we want it to look? What is all of that going to be put together? And that's, not necessarily a daunting thing, but it's a lot of finding the right space. How are we going to...
That's very like in all due fairness, like a lot of New Hampshire breweries, they all look different.
Yeah, a lot of them do. And a lot of them, are, they're either You have the industrial side. You have the kind of we're built in a house kind of way.
Yeah.
You have a lot of.
And then you have Schilling that's like, we're going to be straight from Germany. And
We're going to be straight from Germany. And we're going to build a giant spot on a river.
Yeah, right. Literally on a river.
Yeah. But a lot of the thing for Wildbloom that I think is a little bit of change of thought, and this is, it kind of does screw with the idea of the brick and mortar, but it doesn't really. The idea that I want our beers to go along with an activity you're doing. I want them to be, you've been hiking, you're going to sit down and drink a beer. You've gone on a mountain bike ride, you're now going to drink a beer. You're doing whatever.
these are good beers to do that. 'Cause they don't kick
So
your
that's
ass.
where kind of feeds in. I think the industry is going to get a little bit tired of the I visited 6 breweries this weekend kind of thing. I want to make beers that go along with the activity, not that beers are the activity.
Yeah.
Because I think we need to get back to that.
Well, the number one activity in New Hampshire is like skiing and hiking. So
Right. So I
why
wish.
not capitalize on that?
Exactly. So if we can be in one of those areas that is that thing, then it's like, oh, not just does our brick and mortar represent this, our beers represent it. It's all that whole thing as it ties together.
Yeah.
So we're going to put Wildbloom in one of the AMC huts on top of one of the 4,000 footers.
Yeah.
We got to really work together.
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
I
Question
believe
about,
in you.
question about the brick and mortar.
That accent.
You going to do a brew pub or just straight brewery?
So that has been, so New Hampshire, you have to do some form of.
Correct.
Devin, what are you whipping up?
Are you just going to do like what you bare minimum, or are you just going to commit to?
Best paninis
So
ever.
we're going to do something really well.
Great.
So it's not going to be a throwaway idea. It's going to do the same exact thing that we're trying to do with the beers, which is make world-class beers. So we're going to do one item of food and try and do that great.
So what is
Awesome.
your go-to meal? What do you cook at home? Are you
Kind of
like-
everything.
Yeah.
We cook a lot, pretty much every night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
That's awesome.
So these beers, right? I mean, it's not like you can do much market tasting unless you're in Belgium, right? To be like, I want to make a grisette, and like, you're going off of, I'm sure, a lot of research, maybe memory of having these beers.
A
So what
trip
is
to
it?
Belgium.
A trip to Belgium. But actually, honestly, most of it isn't even really true to style. Most of it for us now is based
Oh, you
upon,
segued into such a.
I was gonna
my
say, all
favorite
right, now
question.
we gotta
yeah,
segue
we
into
got my
that.
favorite question. Yeah.
is based upon that it goes back to the activity.
Yeah.
So the way I look at beer is slightly different. It's not I'm going out to make a grisette.
Yeah.
It's not I'm going out to make this. It's here's this either ingredient or here's an activity.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to reverse engineer that to be what is the best beer I can make to equal that activity. So what I'll do is I'll think about, like Chickadee originally was meant for canoeing. It was a specific canoe ride over here that leaves from down this way. And so it was like, what is the ideal beer that I'm going to be drinking while we are canoeing
Yeah.
the river? Okay, what flavor profile do I want? I want citrusy, I want this, I want dry, I want low ABV. As I start to write that out, it starts to form itself in my head.
Yeah. Well, it's so
I
funny.
love that,
It's so
by the
funny
way.
you mentioned that. Like every time, I mean, we've asked you, and Beth, I apologize. We can ask this question to you as well. We usually ask like your first memory of beer, and it's like the classic lawnmower story. And it's like, yes, it's going to be like TBR, Coors, or whatever it is. But a lot of times people associate that beer with the moment that they have. And I think that's lost recently because we're part of those Facebook groups, Hopheads, and this is not to talk shit about that. It's just like, it's a picture of a beer, and it's like, are you really going to remember that Thursday night in February that you posted this picture of a beer that's like,
You're
this
not,
is the
no.
best beer I've ever had? It's like, dude,
Right.
no way.
So one of my favorite interview questions that when we have to hire people is always, what is your favorite beer memory?
Yeah.
And it's always a time
Oh,
and
you
place.
stole that from us. Come on. No, I'm just kidding.
You definitely did.
But what's your both favorite beer memory? We'll reverse the question on you.
Beth?
My favorite beer memory is when we went to Belgium. We got engaged at
De Brabandier.
De Brabandier. They make Petrus.
Yeah. Do you even remember the beer, though, that you were drinking?
I think we were drinking Petrus.
We were drinking. So what we were doing is, so Petrus is a fooder age beer, and it's a 2-year fooder age.
Wow.
It is 100%. Every single fooder sits for 2 years, and so what we were doing
That's
is we were
awesome.
going through and tasting fresh. We were tasting every 6 months throughout, and that's when we got engaged.
That's so cool.
Shit. That better be your answer. You're fucked.
Yeah, right.
Actually, it might tie into that. It was kind of part of the idea of, do we love like with Beth, not testing beer knowledge or info or what she cared about, but it was very soon after we started dating. I basically brought over like 4 or 5 saisons, and so she lived just a couple houses down, and I brought over 4 or 5 saisons, and I'm like, you're gonna love this style.
Did you love that style before?
I had never had a saison.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Did you love it after?
I did.
Okay, good.
Like my favorite style of beer.
To the
That's
point
awesome.
where I think we walked to a dive bar down the street, drinking a bomber of a saison to make on a picnic table indoors.
I love that.
Yep.
Best stories ever. You guys.
Those are not my first beer memories, but they're the best ones.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think a lot in the American beer culture has fallen into just like, how can we talk about the beer that's in front of us instead of just talking to the people around us?
Exactly. So we were actually just driving back from Vulgar the other day, which is the brewery in Franklin we were talking about before the show started. We were driving back from there on Saturday, and as we were driving back, there's a rail trail that travels the whole way. And there was, after we passed one of the stops, there was these 3 guys, and they were probably in their 50s or 60s, and they had their bikes leaned up against their trucks, and they had 3 little camp stools set out, and they're drinking some beers.
That's awesome.
And all I was like, I want Wildbloom to be the beers they're drinking.
Right.
Did you stop and give it to them?
I should have. If I had any in the car, I probably would have.
Yeah.
But like, that's the kind of thing where when I think about Wildbloom, I think about those guys and that thing more than I do, I think, anything else.
Yeah. I think what y'all are doing is special because we talked about differentiating yourself in the market. And do you want to talk about that? Like, I mean, how do you make a difference? And it's easy to, I hate the word, when somebody says to me, like, it's easy, it's never really easy to do something. So I want to just flat out say that. But, you know, people have had success.
It's quote unquote easy
Yeah,
just
but-
to do status quo IPA.
You know, IPA, pastry stouts, and kettle sours. And that is not to
Hype
talk
beers.
shit about anything that's
And I
there.
mean, to quote you, Matt, that's how you catch a fire in a bottle.
Fire bottle. I did say that, yeah. Fire, yeah. I still don't know that phrase, actually, so it doesn't matter. But
A
yeah,
hardcore fan right here.
yeah, fire in a bottle. That's what I said. Yeah, you're right. But like,
That's fucking awesome.
it's almost, fuck off, dude. But there are a lot of breweries who've had success with that, and I wish breweries continue to have success with that. But it's cool that you are exposing the drinker to maybe not a different brand, but a different way of thinking about beer.
Well, I think it also comes to time in the industry where I'm approaching.
You're old in the
I am
industry,
older. I'm approaching 15 plus years in. And so when I'm looking at that, this business plan for me, I wrote my first business plan in 2009. And
That's
that has
crazy.
changed so much since then from, obviously 100% approach to market, because back then you could only be distributed. There was no such thing as a tap.
Yeah, and you were just doing bombers.
Right.
Yeah.
It was bombers, distro. That was
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And so these different variations of what I've had and what I want to brew and this and that and the other thing has changed for so long, where I think a lot of people, they go from, I'm a home brewer, I want to have my brewery, this is what I need to do to be successful. And I really do not want to have the idea of looking back at Wildbloom and saying, that's not a brewery I want.
Yeah.
Because if you suddenly are making, 90% New England IPAs and you don't drink that style, or if you're making 50% seltzer and you never drink that,
Yeah.
if you have to do that to survive, why did you start the brewery? Because honestly, beer doesn't make enough money for me to own something that I don't want to own.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of
headache,
work.
yeah.
Like, you could enter almost any other field and make more money.
And it's expensive to start.
Yeah,
It's
very
a-
expensive.
Yeah.
So why do I want to look back or look down on my company and be like, ooh, I kind
I
of
hate
you.
this.
That sounds awful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can we do it in the way of not making an IPA? Can we do it in the way of the approach to market with, starting this way and then having a tap room and building up a following? I think we can. My thing I'm looking at, obviously not approach to market, but what they're doing is Off Color out of Chicago. They're now 10 plus years in, never made an IPA.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's for 10 plus years. That's impressive.
I feel like we've seen like a lot of people, and yes, I think we see lagers, pilsners, Kolsch, whatever, being brewer driven.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so it's saying, can we have a brick and mortar? And can we have a beer for someone that comes in and says, I only drink IPAs. What do you have for
Yeah.
me? Can we give them Pinecone? Can we give them...
But hasn't the industry gone through that and been like, I only drink Bud Light? what do you have for me?
Exactly. And that's where we were going back to. I think the industry got away from education. We need to go back to taking that extra 2 minutes to talk to somebody. Yeah, it's harder. Yeah, it kind of sucks. But if that means I have a company that I look at and I say, I love you versus I hate you, yeah, I'm into it.
Who's more fickle, the macro or the IPA, the hopheads?
I would actually say the hopheads at this point.
I was also going to agree with that.
Like,
yeah.
you get a
Definitely.
lot of people that we can be like, so we do another beer called Party at the Moon Tower, and that's a Dazed and Confused reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's essentially a recipe that was based upon the year that that movie was based in. And so it's all grain, so it's like U.S. pills, so it's Maine Malt House pills and Maine Malt House cornflakes, and that's essentially it. And so
Yeah.
it's an American light lager.
Yeah.
So we can give them that thing. And we can be like, this is what American light lager tasted like in the 70s before they used corn syrup and rice syrup and whatever else. And
Yeah.
That's why people
Completely.
like talked like so. Like Coors Light, Coors back in the day, they were like Coors back in the day was the best.
right. And it
Yeah,
was-
like this is what you wish your Bud Light tastes
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Right.
and so you can give those people that option. And really, when someone's saying they love IPA, what they're saying today in New England IPA is they love citrus and they love sweet.
Yeah.
Can you give them citrus and sweet in a different format? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, there's a million ways of getting to different flavors, just understanding,
But it's a name.
yeah, what is it you like about this? And if we then have that ability to talk to them directly, and maybe it takes that extra 30 seconds or minute to convince them, you have to give them a little bit for free to be like, yeah, I'll actually take that.
But we do have to give a lot of respect to IPA because a lot of times that is
That was honestly a big change in the industry that brought in
it was like a
lot
change.
of
Yeah,
people.
that was like the
So-
gateway
Yeah.
beer for
Yeah.
a lot of people.
And I mean, I drank a ton of IPAs.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I obviously I have no problem with them. At Henniker, we brew probably 70-80% IPAs.
Yeah.
And that
You do a
also
good
might,
job with that, yeah.
And there might also be part of that for Wildbloom is that we didn't really want to brew anything that was going to compete with something
Yeah.
I was brewing at Henniker.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough.
Right.
Fair enough. So you are brewing an American light lager though.
Absolutely.
I've,
It's in tank right now.
Right now.
Yes.
Can you drink some off the bread? Or
Yes.
is it, all right. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Open your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want our listeners to find Wildbloom. So what is the website, social media, so on and so forth?
The website is still under construction.
That's okay. It's
But-
always a work in progress.
Instagram and Facebook at Wildbloom Beer.
Yep. And how can like a listener maybe find out where your beer is distributed or how they can get their hands on it at this point?
We try to post on Instagram when we do deliveries. So that's probably the best way, or just shoot us a message on Instagram or Facebook.
They're
and
very
we will-
responsive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll let you know where it's at. It's usually at the same bunch of stores every time.
So our approach to kind of how we started distributing beer was picking one store in every area and distributing to it there.
Yeah.
So it was like one store in Nashua. We have 2 stores in Manchester because two good beer stores there.
Yeah.
One store in Concord, one store in Littleton, one store in Lincoln, one store in North Conway. So
Yeah,
every
you were in
single time-
Seabrook for a little while too at the city.
We should have never been.
Oh, really?
If
Wow.
somebody was buying
Yeah,
and
that's
putting it
weird.
there, that could be.
I wonder where. Maybe I got the beer from you. Then never mind.
I was
We're
gonna
gonna
say.
stick that.
I'm not
Strike
saying-
that.
Can we put it there? That's the best
we're
question.
at Prost, actually, in
Oh.
Hampton.
Okay,
So
cool.
down the road.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's a
Not
new
down.
one
It's
for
not
us.
really down the road, but it is.
Yeah, so he's a new
It's like an
account
extra
where-
20 minutes. No biggie.
We can talk to the city, but yeah, so we. But yeah, so for us, it really has been getting that one store and getting a solid relationship built with them, so that we're not stretching us out so far, so
Yeah.
that when we do have a brick and mortar, we're not like, hey, thank you for supporting us for 3 to 4
But we're
years.
never coming back.
Right. So let's look at these spots that we're distributing to and say we want to have a long-term relationship with them.
And that's also that's about what we can handle as far as working full time, both of us, and having time to deliver. And everything is like an hour away at least.
I mean, do you just like work and deliver every day? I mean,
No,
like,
when do you?
Yeah.
He does most of the deliveries, so because
it's-
he's got a little more flexible of a schedule than
yeah.
I have way more flexibility where I can get here to Henniker earlier and the beer stored
True.
here.
like 4 a.m.
True.
yeah,
Yeah.
like 4 a.m. Yeah.
It's really early.
So no sleeping. No
I
sleeping.
can't do that.
How are you even alive right now? You're so chipper. It's like do you
Coffee.
Coffee.
Just, yeah. Okay. Okay.
A lot of coffee.
Double roast.
Yeah.
Well, if our listeners get a chance to go to some of the farmers markets, talk with Devin and Beth about the beer that's being produced, because
It's excellent.
I don't use the term world class. I know a lot of people use world class. I haven't had. I'm
Bold.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not the biggest Belgian fan of beer, but what you're
These
doing
are
is
what you
good.
think of a Belgian beer. When you think of Belgian, you think of yeasty, phenolic. You think of all those other things.
Phenolic, that's
This right? Good buzzword.
Yeah.
These are very clean, easy drinking beers that you like.
that you can make memories with.
Aw,
I mean, I don't mean
like
to sound like
that.
cliche, but I mean, like,
I liked it though.
I think a lot of times we're looking for beers that like.
Checking
Sometimes we're
off.
just checking a box off and drinking beer sometimes, and it sounds crappy, but I want to make some memes.
So that's the idea behind it, is how do we do low ABV things that you can have some of and you can, bring along with you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And also, if you do come see us at the farmers markets, just to give a shout out to all the other vendors, because there are some really, really good other vendors besides us there. So you can get your cheese, you can get your bread, you can get your meat, like greens, microgreens, everything.
There's a ton of great vendors in the Concord area. It's kind of
it's
bananas.
worth the trip.
Yeah.
I
Well, we're
love
going to
it.
have to do that.
Noted.
Well, Devin and Beth, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in 100 episodes.
See,
We came full circle a couple times this episode. So, so next couple of weeks, we got a couple awesome episodes coming out for all of our listeners. Make sure you check out Wildbloom if you get a chance. And if not, let us know, and we'll try to figure out a way to get it to you
Oh yeah.
somehow.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.